First, an edit. This is still beta. Actually, I was still hacking it an hour ago. It's not complete. I mean, it's complete in a sense, but it needs to be still worked on as far as speed and disk access, etc. But the game concepts are all in there. This game is not an arcade game. This is a fairly involved simulation of naval combat between the old wooden ships, sail ships, where they fought battles at sea that lasted hours. It's based on a game by Michael Stradley from 1984 for the Atari and the TRS-80 computers. And this is the manual for it. And I based the program on the specifications in the manual. So this game is fairly large. It does not fit in one file. It's written in XP, by the way, over the last 3 weeks. So it's about 700 lines or so. It's growing a little bit. So it's broken down into 3 different separate files and chained together. And these files refer to each other back and forth. Unfortunately, with XP, when you chain a file, it has to pre-scan the new file, and so it slows things down every time it loads. This is what I'm trying to fix, and I'll be fixing that over the next week or 2 before I release the game. So you will see a very long pause between different parts of the game. I'll try to talk through that while we're waiting. But that won't be, hopefully, as visible with the release when it comes out.
Connected to Windows 5.
Oh, wait. There we go. So, the game starts with 2 options. You can have 3 preloaded scenarios. I have 8 preloaded scenarios, which are all based on actual battles that occurred. The manual, when I write it for the game, will have detailed descriptions of the actual battle, how it went, who won. And you can try and recreate that battle, see if you can get the same outcome, or maybe take the role of the underdog and try to see if you can actually win it that way. You have also the option of creating a completely new scenario. The computer will prompt you for the data that you need. It's pretty involved. I mean, creating a new scenario because what you need is things like a ship name. Let's try something here. Whoops.
Oh no!
As you can see, it's still buggy, so let's run it again.
It's a real guy.
I'll edit that out while it's.
He means he'll edit it in several times with hilarious sound effects.
It just bugs me. Let me just see why.
You don't have a space after beep.
All the way in the back.
Man, we're geeks.
I have to have space here?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. Now we're going to have probably problems with all that. So we'll skip that part. I'll fix it later. So just trust me that you can enter a scenario. It worked yesterday. I made so many changes already. Okay, so let's say we'll pick a battle scenario instead. Basically, these are 8 scenarios, and each one, like I said, is based on a particular battle. First one, for example, is between the Thames, the British ship, the Thames, versus the French ship, the Ioani, which occurred in 1793 at 10:15 hours, to be exact, off Brest, France. And the British won, by the way.
Hey!
Yeah. The scenarios require certain information, including the name of the ship, nationality, total firepower of the guns, as well as the number of guns that you have. There are 2 types of guns in these ships. Generally, there are long guns, which really have a long range, about 800 meters or so. And then you have the carronades, which are shorter type of guns. So this type of information, you need to provide that if you want to create your own scenario. And you can find all this historical data online, etc. You also need to know the crew size. You also need to know the hull strength. And you need to provide wind direction, etc. So it is a pretty involved simulation. When you pick a scenario, everything is picked up for you already. It's already internally done, so you don't have to worry. So let's pick scenario number 1. And then you will be asked to pick which ship you want to command. You can be British, French. There are also scenarios which involve American and British during the American Revolution. It could also be, there's a scenario which involves Spanish ship.
There's only one T in British.
Okay, we'll go for the British.
I've never been
It's
so
going to load
salty.
right now the first section of the ship, so there will be a little bit of a wait here. Actually, probably a couple of minutes. So the reason I was able to do this program was in such a short time was because the author really included in here all the formulas, all the tables, everything that is needed to be able to actually simulate most of the things that we need to simulate in here. This is quite extensive, and there are a lot of calculations that happen behind the scenes, hence the size of the program. But overall, I think it's quite satisfying when you start playing it, if you're into that sort of thing. It's definitely not an arcade though. So now it's almost ready to show. Okay. So here is the main battle screen. This is where you spend most of your time. This is there's a square here, dotted line square, and that square is about 1.6 kilometers per side. So basically 1.6 kilometers square area where the battle will occur. Your ships are the two obviously kind of icons there. Whatever ship you pick will be red. So the red ship is always yours. And then the information for the wind is included. It said wind from 0, and there is a wind rose up there that you can see, which will tell you the direction of the wind. You can use that also to determine your ship's direction. On the bottom, you see the names of the ship. The H means the heading, which is 1 for both ships, which is basically north-east. S is the speed. And all ships start in every scenario at a nominal speed of 48. And then the L is the sail setting. And I'll talk about that in just a minute, which is here full sails. And finally, we have the distance between the ships in actual distance, which is 900 meters. Now, when you start, you have actually three types of orders you need to enter. One, you need to know what type of sail you want to use. For sails, on these ships, you have three types of sail settings. You have the full sails, where everything is completely out. You have battle sails, which basically reduces the surface area of the ship so that when you're in battle, the enemy shots don't destroy your sails too quickly. You reduce your target. And finally, you have the back sails, which under certain circumstances, you'll be able to actually slow down the ship if you need to slow down for some reason. Wind direction is important here. You cannot go straight up the wind. You can tack, which is basically go across the wind, but you cannot just turn into the wind and stay there. You can tack your ship, however, across the wind, and you can go into different points of sail, that we call them. There's different types of points of sail, whether you're running or going broad reach, etc. All this will be explained in the manual. So basically, pick your sail. When you're so far apart, there's no reason to pick anything but full sail. So I usually would pick full sail unless I'm about 300 meters or so from the enemy ship, at which point I'll probably go to battle sails. The next order you need to use is your helm order. Basically, where do you want to go? Do you want to turn to port? Port is basically left. Starboard is right. You can tack, which is the T here, and you need to be actually in the 1 or 7 position and tack across either way. Tacking takes 2 turns, so when you tack, you're first shown against the wind. The next turn, you're not allowed to enter any orders except just keep tacking. So the computer will take care of that for you. And end means do nothing, just keep on the same heading. So let's say we just stay on that. So once you do that, the computer-controlled ship will do its thing, and now it's obviously... I created an AI in there that I think is pretty good. I mean, you'd have probably a bit of a hard time beating this computer program. You know, if you... unless you really read the manual very thoroughly. So the ships will move here. They're based on sprites, and so they move at a very fine level. However, what I need you to remember with this program is that Even with sprite motion, the movement displayed here is an approximation because of the inherent resolution of the screen. The calculations occurring behind the scenes are much more precise than what can be seen here. Why is this important? This is important because when you do a gun battle, the facing of your guns will be important, the bearing of your guns. So you may seem like you think your guns will bear on a ship, but on the screen, but actually when the program calculates it may be off by maybe a meter, which is enough for you to miss completely. So when your guns don't bear during a battle, the computer will tell you your guns do not bear, so you cannot fire. So now we're waiting for the next section of the program to load here, and it should be coming up hopefully fairly quickly. There it goes. As I mentioned, each ship here has two types of guns, the long guns and the carronades. The guns are distributed on your ship over 4 different sections. You have 2 bow sections, port and starboard, and you have 2 stern sections, also port and starboard. And they are represented in the columns here. P bow, P stern, S bow, and S stern. Underneath, there's this RS underneath. This is the type of shot that you have in your gun. These ships use 5 types of shots. They use the round shots, which is the one that has the highest range. It's basically a round metal ball. And these can be used by all the guns. These have the highest range. However, remember in this simulation, every gun has a different ballistic signature. So, and it depends on the type of shot you have in it and the type of gun you're using. So it's not a linear relationship. It's actually a ballistic relationship. So if you are at the extreme range of the gun, you're probably not going to get much damage if you fire it at that range. So we have the round shot, you have the double shot, which is basically 2 balls together. These shots are great against hulls. They're not so good against masts, against crew, etc. Then you have the grape and double grape. The grape and double grape are basically like the shotgun pellets. They're stuffed in the gun, they shot. These are great anti-personnel shots. They will do great damage to the crew. Won't do much damage to the guns or the hull. They may do some damage to the masts. And then finally you have the what we call dismantling shot, which is really 2 balls connected with a chain that they're shot from the gun, and their job is to go and decapitate the crew and basically destroy masts. These are most effective at shorter ranges. Anything below 300 is a good range. The closer the better. Beyond 300, don't bother. They're not going to be effective. So when you're ready to do gun battle, if your guns bear, the computer will give you the option to fire your guns. You can look at your gun distribution here. By the way, the 100 against each one of the next to each one of those shots means the reloading factor. These guns are reloaded in real time, but it's not instantaneous. It's simulated. So right now, because we're starting the game, all the guns are loaded. Once you fire them, then it will take 2 to 3 turns to reload the guns, depending on the type of gun, depending on the type of shot you're using, and depending on the number of crew you have assigned to the shots. And we get to that point in a minute. Right now, all your guns are fully loaded, ready to fire. So if you fire, all you have to do is click yes, and it'll ask you if you want to fire at the hull or you want to fire at the masts. Remember, we're at 880 meters. There's no gun in your arsenal that will reach that far. I'm just demonstrating here. So once you pick what you want, let's say we want to fire at the hull, the side that's appropriate to fire, here it's the port side or the left side of the red ship, will fire from the port side. So all the port guns will fire at the same time against the yellow ship, which is the Irani. So let's pick hull, and then the computer will calculate the number of damage you get, which is 0, obviously. After that, it will ask you if you want to change the loadout for the next turn. Again, because it's not instantaneous, the minute you decide to change the loadout, then your reloading factor goes to 0 on that particular gun section because it takes time to reload. And you can type in whatever you want. If you click yes here, you can type in, say, double grape, for example, for this gun, and then keep going through the whole thing. At that point, if the computer feels that it has a shot at hitting you, it will fire its guns. In this case, it's smart enough to know it's too far, it won't bother, it won't waste its ammunition. So it'll stick there. So once your gun battle has occurred, then you're taken to the status screens. There are two status screens, one for your ship and one for the enemy ship. The same as our ship here, so you get a full status report. You get your hull strength, your starboard firepower, your port firepower, your mass damage was 0, your crew morale, which is 100, and your total crew number 187. So nominal, nothing has changed at this point. All of these factors are very important in determining damage and whether your ship surrenders or not. Crew morale is of utmost importance because you need your crew to be in good morale to be able to do the maneuvers that it needs to turn the ship, to load the guns, to fire the guns. And so if your crew morale drops below 50, there is a random chance of 50% that your ship will strike its colors. So you have to really make sure that you understand that number well and you manage it. Mass damage, obviously, you know, if the more damage you have, the less speed you can do and the less maneuvering you can do. And your firepower, as you get damage to your guns, your firepower goes down, and so your damage hits also go down. Crew distribution is a very important concept in this game because as a real captain, you have to assign crew to certain sections, depending on your strategy. If your strategy is to just fire away at the bigger ship, but you don't want to do any kind of boarding activity, then you will have to put more crews in the guns, on the guns, than on the decks. The computer will give you an assessment of your crew assignments here. A means actual crew assignment, and R means recommended crew assignment, depending on your firepower and your decks, etc. Here we have pretty much decked out all the crew assignments except the tops. The tops are basically crew that you can assign to basically the tops of the mast, which can snipe away at the other crews if the ships are close enough. You cannot fire from the tops unless your distance between ships is about 120 meters. If you decide you want to change your distribution, let's say we want to add some crew to the tops here, you answer yes to the distribution, and then you pick the from, where do you want your crews to go from. Let's say we take some from the deck because we have extras, and we take them to the tops. Let's go to tops, which is 4. And then you say how many crews you want, and voila. You got your reassignment done. And you can keep going, reassigning to, from, etc. until you're done. Once you're done, you don't want to do any more crew assignments, then we go to the enemy status ship, and then you get the same information except you're not allowed to see the crew distribution so that you don't get an unfair advantage. The computer does not know anything about your crew distribution either. And once this is done, you press a key and then you go back to the battle screen. Now there are several other details I need to mention. One, the computer bases all its strategy and its movement on the previous move activity. It does not have any knowledge of what you currently entered, so that it doesn't get an unfair advantage on you. So everything is simultaneous. It may not be shown simultaneously, but everything, the fire damage, the ship movement is simultaneously calculated. So if you fire first, that doesn't mean that you reduce the ship's power before the other ship's power before it has a chance to fire. No, everything's occurring simultaneously. So it's fairer that way. There are a couple of things that can happen with these ships when they get too close together. One is that they can foul their masts or their sails, which means they get entangled. Or, if they get too close, you can choose to grapple the enemy ship, which means you throw a grapple and you try to hold it together so you can board it. If either of the ships are grappled or fouled, you will get the option to board the ship. Historically, boarding has been devastating to ships, to enemy ships. If you manage to board a ship successfully, you pretty much got it. But the enemy crew is not going to sit idle either, and they will fight you to the tooth and bone. So they will put up a good fight. So there is a random factor there depending on your crew morale. It's very important, and the number of crews assigned to your decks, whether you'll be able to repel a boarding activity or not. And same thing if you want to board yourself, you need to have a certain number of crew, and you need to also have a good morale. Otherwise, you're not going to do it. And so that's basically the major activity. So you try to outmaneuver your ship. The basic maneuvers with the ships here is to try to, what we call get a rake, where your ship is on a broadside and your enemy ship is pointing straight at you. The enemy ship cannot fire at you, but you have the full broadside firepower for you, just raking that ship. That's the best strategy. If you have a big ship, once you kind of weaken your enemy ship, you can try to get close in, grapple, and board, and see if you can get the other ship to strike your colors. And like I said, the computer will do its best to do the same to you. So, and that's basically the essence of it. I'm still trying to fix a few things. As you can see, there are still some minor issues here I need to fix. And I need to make sure that the outcomes make sense. The formulas are in there, but I need to test them better. I should have this out hopefully in the next 2 to 3 weeks with a full manual. And hopefully it'll be fun. Any questions?
Waleed, what affects the morale of the crew?
Damage?
Damage.
Damage.
And is there any way to enhance that? I mean, by damaging the other ship, do you then increase your own morale?
No, you can't. Once your morale is gone, it's gone for good. So it will keep declining. The idea is to try to destroy the other ship's morale faster than your ship's morale is.
Is there any direct correlation? One hit takes off a point, or one hit takes off 3 points, or something like that?
Yes, I mean there is a probability table. The biggest morale destroyer is really damage to the crew, because damage is assigned not just a global damage point, although it's shown here as a global damage point. Actually, damage is much more complicated. It's assigned to different port sections, ship sections, assigned to crew, assigned to guns, assigned to mass. So if you have damage to crew, that will sap your morale faster than if you have damage to the hull, or if you have damage to the mass. And it all varies depending on your crew distribution, etc.
Can you show us a typical battle?
Well, it's too slow to run right now through a full battle. It will take a long time.
You've got plenty of time.
Well, no, I mean it takes like 3 to 4 minutes to load between screens. That's the problem. I haven't tweaked that yet. That's why I'm not.
Well, last year you wrote us a program that takes about 38 days to load it.
I know, I'm famous for these type of things.
Real hardware, that's for those who weren't here. But he showed it on a simulator, which was much faster, but was it, I think it was 36 days or something?
36 days.
36 days to load in on real hardware. TI. I didn't try it.
Come on.
I'll take your whistle. It's a fascinating game.
Yeah, once I got it tweaked, I think it'll be interesting. There won't be any waits like that. It will just keep running through. And you can develop quite an interesting strategy there and see if you can beat the historical outcome with what you have. I mean, frequently the British had a knack for winning despite overwhelming odds. They had great strategies. They knew how to whittle the enemy ships little by little, and then homing in on the kill with a boarding action.
I find it fascinating. And there are 8 separate scenarios.
8 separate scenarios, and you can play either or of the opponents at any point.
Is it a 2-player game? Can you
No,
is it
it's
only
only
against the
single player.
computer?
There's not enough space. The original game had an option for a solitaire, which is what I'm implementing, or up to 6 players, 6 ships at a time. Yeah. But it's all active players. So. Any other questions?
Does the wind direction change through the game, or is it set at the start?
No, in this original game, it's set for the game.
Okay.
However, I mean, it's a very simple thing to just have it very randomly. Not necessarily. It would be annoying if it shifted every turn, but I could set it so that it's 1 out of 6 times it may shift during a battle. These battles, typically, from my tests, will run anywhere between 30 minutes to 2 hours playing the simulation. This is not a quick game. Unless you want to just go and just keep getting hit all the time. If you want to really manage it as the real captain, typically in real life, these battles lasted somewhere between 6 to 12 hours in real life. In this game, probably the most it would take you is 2 hours if you have an underdog ship and you're trying to kind of just circle around your enemy and try to kind of whittle at it little by little.
I don't recall seeing, do you show the wind speed, or is it just direction? Okay.
No, the wind speed is I'm sorry, no, not wind speed.
Okay.
Wind direction only. There's no wind speed taken into account here.
Could you use this engine that you're using to recreate battles with non-wooden ships, like moving up into towards the modern area, like Civil War type?
Well, the engine, it will be completely different because the factors used here to calculate the speed based on the type of sail you're using, etc. It may not be that much different as far as crew and hull damage, etc. I mean, the factors will change a little bit, but the sailing part will be completely different. There won't be any issue with tacking, we're going against the wind, etc. It's feasible, I suppose. Yeah.
There was an Avalon Hill game, I think it's called the Battle of Jutland, that took place, I think, in 1916, correct me if I'm wrong, Antica. And that is a very complex game between British and German, British home fleet and the German high seas fleet, and that has entirely different rules than the sailing battle game. Faster, of course, as well as just explained.
Right.
So that'll be his next project.
Right. Anything else? All right. Well, hopefully I'll have it out within a few weeks.
Cool.